all of the glass particles should remain behind in the Wattmann filter. And now you have 10 milliliters of filtered and clean injectable steroids there waiting for you in the sterile vial without any glass particles. So what can we do to not end up with scar tissue encapsulated glass particles in all of the injection sites within our body while using pharmaceutical grade gear or underground labs produced in ampules? And again, I can't emphasize this enough. The body will not break down and metabolize the glass particles that you've now injected, or at least not within your lifetime. Your body has to decompose for these glass particles to be released. And then maybe when your ancestors find you find your grave, they probably thought you swallowed a disco ball. Besides using 1 milliliter ampules, which most steroids are produced in, besides a couple brands exclusive to Thailand produced in 2 milliliter ampules, using a cotton ball to surround the neck of the ampule while breaking it away from the body as the dot or the indicators where the break point is facing towards the body, then using a 29 gauge needle to draw the medication into the syringe. But that's going to be difficult if we're using Bayer testosterone or rimabolan, which is produced in castor oil, which is thick as right? That's going to take significant time, so I always use an 18 gauge to draw from those ampules. And then you can use a Wattmann microfilter, either before drawing or after drawing, to make sure that those glass particles do not end up in your injection site. Now, I do know I have tried a Wattmann filter many times with different micron gauges to draw from an ampule, and that takes very, very long also. It's probably faster to draw with a 29 gauge drawing castor oil from a Bayer testosterone amp than drawing any kind of oil with a Wattmann filter through an 18 gauge, because the filter is so, well, paper thin, obviously. So let's say you crack open 10 1 milliliter steroid ampules, you transfer the contents, glass particles included, into a 10 or 20 milliliter syringe using an 18 gauge needle. Then you replace the 18 gauge needle while the medication and the glass particles are within the syringe. You replace the 18 gauge needle for a Wattmann filter and another fresh 18 gauge needle. Then as you're pressing down into a sterile vial, you're injecting directly into it, all of the glass particles should remain behind in the Wattmann filter. And now you have 10 milliliters of filtered and clean injectable steroids there waiting for you in the sterile vial without any glass particles. And then you can draw with an insulin syringe or whatever kind of gauge of syringe you prefer and administer that daily, either subcutaneous or intramuscularly, for the most stable serum concentrations without any worry of injecting glass particles alongside of that. And this is basically what I do, but I don't use a Wattmann filter because it's so tedious. And again, up until doing the research, I was not aware that glass particles could end up in my body, but I might have to do this going forward. Otherwise, my autopsy report will probably say glutes made out of disco balls. Going forward, I will still crack open the ampules of a week's worth of steroid use, transfer all of the content into a single syringe of, let's say, 10 milliliters, and then use a Wattmann filter to filter out all of the glass particles before I inject all of this content into a sterile vial, which I will then administer subcutaneously with insulin syringes. Now, for all of the guys that use cerebrolysine, which is presented in ampules of 2 milliliters, 5 milliliters, 10 milliliters, or 20 milliliters, I don't think that a Wattmann filter is going to filter out glass particles, but somehow pass the amino acids, right? The neurotropic factors contained within cerebrolysine. I think that those neurotropic factors have a much larger particle size than the glass particles, which could potentially end up in the liquid after cracking open those ampules. So it might be a little bit difficult to forego glass particles if you were using cerebrolysine. And I will say that those glass ampules of cerebrolysine shatter a lot easier than the Bayer testosterone produced in Germany or Thailand. So a little bit food for thought and caution is advised. And all of that being said and taken into consideration, I can't remember for the life of me ever reading a case report or hearing anecdotally that anybody in the fitness community worldwide has suffered from complications from injecting glass particles potentially. All right, so the scientific evidence is there, but does this play out in the real world? I'm not entirely sure. So you're just going to have to wait for my autopsy report, which will be dropping in about 60 years. I do plan to live to about 100 years old, but if I kick off at 80, well, then it's only 40 years down the line. The medical community has my full permission to analyze all of my injection sites and publish their findings regarding if there's glass particles in those injection sites encapsulated with scar tissue or not. Again, I have cracked open over 1,000 ampules in my lifetime, and I will continue to do so. But I might be using a Wattman filter going forward. Food for thought, guys, and thanks so much, Robert Malik, for bringing this to my attention publicly on the Vigorous Q&A. I had no idea that there were actually scientific publications investigating if glass particles ended up in the medications and then potentially ending up in the scar tissue after administrations. I might be using a Wattman filter going forward, even though I've never seen a case report or heard of any complications following administrations of medications presented in glass ampules. Still, the scientific evidence is there. So again, Robert Malik, thanks so much for bringing this to our attention. You can find all of the citations down below, and you can find everything that I'm associated with down below as well. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at VigorSteve. Vigorous crew, you guys know what to do. A front double bicep for you guys, almost exclusively pharmaceutical grade from glass ampules, mixed in with a little bit of homebrew trembolone sandwich, which was presented in